I think that there is a lot of similarity between these different characters, including Vladimir Putin. The way to think about what I call illiberal populists is that they are people who essentially think that all of the problems of politics are relatively easy to solve. But the problem at the moment is just that there's a corrupt elite that's in it for themselves and that's in cahoots with some kind of minority. And if you listen to Mr. Gollnisch, that might be sort of Muslim immigrants in France. If you listen to Mr. Ackerman, that's neoliberal financiers, but it has much the same sort of role it plays in the rhetoric. And so what we need is for somebody who is an expression of a people's will, who has common sense to come into power, be the spokesperson. I am your voice, Donald Trump said in Cleveland at the GOP convention. Be the spokesperson for ordinary people. Put aside the corrupt elites and finally be able to solve those problems, because they're actually relatively straightforward. You go in, you do the thing that everybody knows you should do, and voila, the problems are solved. And so this has two interesting elements. It is popular. It is actually based on majoritarianism. It often speaks the language of the people in a very real way, but it also ends up violating in a very serious way the rights both of ethnic and religious minorities at home and often of other countries abroad. And the problem with that is that politics is more complicated than that. That neither the kind of economic autarky favored by Mr. Ackerman or Mr. Gollnisch is actually going to solve the very complicated economic problems that we face today. So one of the dangers of the liberal populists from Trump to Viktor Orban and to Vladimir Putin is that they end up treating people within the countries very unjustly, or going in for foreign policy adventurism like invading the Ukraine. But another problem is that though the popular anger about the economy, for the popular anger about the...
into that scheme, because Peña Nieto is your guy. He's your guy, and he's worse than Trump. How do you explain that?
Well, look, I'm not an expert on Mexican politics. He's certainly not my guy. I don't know who you guys are.
I'm talking about Mexico. This is exactly the problem. It demonstrates exactly the authoritarian underside. Let
me return to the more important point, I would just like to finish one point very quickly, and then I'll leave it open to the extremes, which is about economic policy. Because I think it's true that we have to take very, very seriously the economic concerns that people have. We have to reform the economic system. It's very clear that at the moment, the social basis of the stability of our system is being undermined. But the problem is that the kind of policies that are being floated, both on the far left and the far right, are not actually going to solve those complicated problems. And we see that whether it's in Venezuela, which is in absolute economic freefall at the moment, a complete disaster, but we also see it even in a place like Poland, where you now have a far-right populist government that's going to run the biggest deficit this year of any Polish government in the last 20 years, and which is going to be disastrous for long-term economic growth. So the trick is to take the angst and the fears of ordinary people very seriously, but not necessarily to go for the simplest economic solution that they want in the short run, because that's actually not going to work. In the same way in which building a wall on the border to Mexico is not going to solve the complicated issues of identity in the United States.
Let me ask Bruno Gollnisch.
Rules is not populism.
Bruno Gollnisch, your party used to be in